Maelstrom News fans, today is the 7th anniversary of the day that I created Maelstrom News. Now, unfortunately, I don't have anything planned. I don't have anything set up. I don't have, some kind of big performance or some kind of thing to do. So what I thought I would do instead is just talk to you. And I've realized that I'm looking at a limitation of where I can go with all of this. What can I really do? I mean, I've already talked about just about everything there is except for expanding upon third worldism some more. I recently entirely revamped the other channel. The whole thing about it just seemed it just seemed like too much. Like I was trying too hard. So I've rebranded the other channel to make it more, user-friendly, more non-specific. Yeah, video game stuff is still going to go there and all that, but I'm going to start doing other stuff, like other things that I've wanted to do that I haven't really gotten around the chance to do. So I'm going to be more experimental with that channel. So check that one out. There's not going to be stuff on it every single day like there is this one here, because that would just be asking too much for me to do. But I also am wondering where to go from here. I'm completely limited by the fact that this costs money to do and doesn't make me money. And I'm trying to come up with ideas of things, of places where I could go with this. In terms of books, I've already written, 12 books. I just recently wrote one. Remember this? I said a long time ago I was going to write that Stalker fan fiction book. Well, I did. I wrote that novel, and I can't sell it because derivative works, so I just give it away for free. I'm going to provide a link to that in the description, just in case you haven't heard about that, because it's okay. It's a first novel. Don't expect too much. It is a fanfic. Keep that in mind. Whatever. But I'm thinking, what else is there left for me to do? I'm still in the middle of writing a book on third worldism. And this is the one that I'm hoping is going to be my magnum opus. This is the one that's going to be the really good one that everybody remembers. I mean, the last one, the Utopian Capitalism book, was pretty good. But this, I want this to be the one big one that really says me. So that's where I'm going right now. Other than that, all I can continue to do is to give the same news, the same analysis that I always have, despite, anything that might change in the world. So I've really kind of, for the most part, run out of ideas. I mean, I've pretty much done everything I wanted to do except for a couple of books and a couple of videos. And there's nowhere for me to expand this whole thing to, because it's not profitable. I just get enough, my income is enough to just barely get by, so I can't really invest in anything. So I just have to keep going the way it is. I can't expand into anything else. And I'm also very limited by labor too. I'm only one person with so many hours in the day, with only so much time to do this. I would need more people. And then I really would be having to pay those people. And if they volunteered, then their labor usually just isn't regular. Like, there can be days when they're not going to be doing anything and whatnot. So I really just got to try to find some new place to go. And I was talking to a friend who's also a third worldist the other day, and he brought up a really interesting point that I hadn't thought about. And it's not a fully formed theory, but it's an idea that I wanted to share. Okay. Part of the reason why we have a Marxism-Leninism is because the world doesn't necessarily fit the model that Marx gave us. Hence the age of imperialism, the highest form, the highest stage of capitalism, which is why Lenin put that theory together. And we almost universally accept that. Then Mao came along in a completely different time, and he put together new theories for the different time that the world was in, the 60s and the early 70s. And not everybody accepts these theoretical contributions. Although you could do so if you just completely ignored all the Maoist revolutions that came after that. Not necessarily Maoism, not necessarily Mao Zedong thought. There were other writers who contributed to Maoist theory, but not necessarily Mao Zedong thought, because that's specifically what he said. There were other contributions by Gonzalo and other writers. Which makes me wonder why third worldism must be rejected so much by people. Because clearly we don't live anywhere near the same time that Marx did. Not Lenin and not even Mao. And one of the reasons why we have the developments in theory that we do, why there are new contributions that are not only good, are absolutely necessary. Because the world and the class structure of the world doesn't fit entirely the way it was that Marx described 150 years ago. Think about it like this. There almost was, though, there was no middle class during Marx's time. Thus, we had to start coming up with some kind of theoretical understanding of it. Just as we had to come up with some kind of theoretical understanding of imperialism. Because there are places in the world that don't fit Marx's theory, which is why we have Maoism, a revolution in the countryside to surround the cities and invade them, which was the opposite of the Bolshevik Revolution, where revolution began in the cities and spread out to the countryside. So we already know that there are class relations that didn't exist during Marx's time, or at least Marx himself did not theorize about, that required us to have somebody to do that. Now here's what my friend thought of. Look at Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is in a very unique class structure that has not been seen before. When we really look at how Saudi Arabia works, we see an extraordinary amount of oil wealth. And what we also see is that Saudi Arabians get a stipend, a guaranteed money from the government just because of how wealthy the country is. Now, as a result of doing that, there's very little actual Saudi laborers. When we look at Saudi Arabia, we see that the majority of its workforce, like its working class, are imported from other countries, Palestine, India, Pakistan, the Philippines, and other places. How do you look at the class structure of a country, or how do you view it, when the working class is literally foreign to the country itself? Where does that fit in Marx's analysis? Where does it fit in Marx's analysis of class, where there's a group of people, a whole class of people, the regular Saudi citizens, who are guaranteed a minimal income? What happens then? Where is that in Marx's analysis? It's not there. In fact, the idea was completely foreign to him. It wasn't in Lenin's either. It wasn't in Mao's. This is an entirely new thing that none of the past heads of Marxism thought of. And how do we look at that? So now we look at the regular citizen of Saudi Arabia as someone who benefits of the extreme exploitation of the migrant laborers that they bring in. You know, what hand do they really have in revolution? They're already not even working. They're not a working class. Very few of them actually work. And we could see a really good manifestation of that. Look at them fighting in Yemen right now. Saudi Arabia is good at bombing the hell out of people. They're good at shooting artillery, and they're great at it. But their soldiers suck. Their soldiers get their ass kicked. And the main reason for that is because these guys are essentially rich kids. They don't really want to fight and die in that war. Like, they can swear oaths to the Saudi military, to the royal family, all they want. But in the end, their hearts are not in it. They don't really want to fight. That's why Saudi Arabia uses ISIS to attack people. Because ISIS will fight, and all they have to do is sit back and fund it. Think about that. Saudi Arabia is now a quasi-imperialist power that doesn't, strictly speaking, have its own military. It literally pays foreigners to fight its wars for them. Or In another case, it relies on the United States as a form of national defense. It relies on U.S. military power. So it relies on foreigners to do it for them. But for their own stuff, they literally pay is essentially foreign mercenaries to do the job for them. What does that say? That's how rich this country is. That Saudi Arabia's almost their entire working class is an amalgamation of people from different nationalities, from different nations. Where does that fit into Marx's analysis? It doesn't. There was no such thing during his time. There's no such thing in his own theoretical works. Can we really consider the people of Saudi Arabia to be, victims of capitalism? Or even victims of imperialism? No. Because even they aren't even actually a working class. They're a pretty privileged class who don't have to work. And the few of them that do, their numbers are very small. To the point where they don't even have to join the military. Their whole class isn't even needed to fight wars, for the most part. They've got ISIS to do that. How does that stand in the global class order? That's a very unique situation. I mean, even if we look at the total hell-like totalitarian structure of Saudi Arabia, when we look at, the Wahhabi police, the religious police, normally when we think of fascism is traditionally described as a stage of the collapse of capitalism, a period of crisis where fascism is used to beat down the working class so that it doesn't revolt. But where are the Saudi people revolting? There's no armed uprisings there. There's small things like women drivers and stuff like that. But there's no class revolt by Saudis. Even less than there is in the United States. Probably even less than there is in Western Europe, in the social democracies. So that begs the question, why are the religious police there? And I don't believe that it's purely for religious reasons. When I was discussing it with this friend, he said he believes that it's probably to prevent certain liberal ideas from getting into society. Like, say, someone in the royal family starts getting Shia ideas in their mind. Or one of them starts investigating Marxism and starts saying some really radical things. The religious police in Saudi Arabia are really there as a form of ideological control, not a physical control. You don't have waves of them coming in and beating down protesters or beating down strikes. Although in terms of the protesters, there's the rare occasion. But that's not the same as fascism or European fascism as we know it. This is an entirely different thing. This is really more of an ideological control as opposed to a physical suppressive force. And then when we really look at how Saudi Arabia is set up, it's not set up like any other country. The royal family is really more of a gigantic cartel that watches the oil resource for their American paymasters, or in the United Kingdom. After all, a lot of these Arab countries were actually set up by foreigners, particularly the UK. So they're not even really corporations. They're really more of a cartel that run things for Western interests. And this is so completely outside of anything Marx ever wrote about that where would you even begin to theorize it? You would have to do something entirely new. And I think that's something we need to keep in mind. And despite how angry people get at third worldists for trying to forward a theory that is very clearly out of date, it needs to be worked on. There needs to be new theory. We don't live in the same days as Marx, Lenin, or Mao. The world is different. Global class structure is different. And this requires us to look into it. Now, those were just some brief ideas that I discussed with him, just some things to note. I don't have any particular theory about that, although I am going to start looking into it because Saudi Arabia is such an extreme case, or not necessarily extreme, but very different from everything else that is out there. So we do need to start looking at that. And I thought, maybe there's something I could just whip out in this video, just put out those ideas so that, people could start talking about it, people would start thinking about it. Because I think it is important. I think it is important to understand the class divisions when they don't fit the standard model that we've been given. Then we have to build new models for new times, just as Lenin did, just as Mao did. Because Marx noted the tremendous dynamicism of capitalism, that it can keep changing over time, that it can absorb new things and work with it to make the changes necessary in order to sustain itself. And that's one of the great things about capitalism, is that it's flexible, it's dynamic. In past systems, feudalism, tribal society, they couldn't do that. And one of the reasons why they fell, along with the development of the productive forces, obviously. But the unique thing about capitalism is that it can adjust and it can change itself to whatever it needs to in order to survive. So we can't just sit there and claim that capitalism didn't change or class didn't change in the last 150 years. Of course it did. And there's just some ideas that I wanted to put out there. So think about that, guys. Because I really didn't have anything to do for this day, and I certainly just can't let the 7th anniversary pass by without having said something. So I hope, at least in the context of putting this, at least this particular video together, it would give you guys something to think about, and maybe it would make watching this video worthwhile after all. So, in short, thank you for watching all these years. Thank you to everybody who has supported me during this entire time. I greatly appreciate your support, and a special thanks to anybody who donates money to keep this show going. I thank you for that very much, and here's to hoping 2016 will be even better, and that maybe I can find something to expand this channel and make it better, maybe even make it something profitable. Also, RT, if you just happen to be watching, call me. So, thank you for watching. Hope you guys continue to enjoy it, and haters, I hope you keep on hating. See ya. If you like this video and you'd like to see more of them, then head over to my Patreon page and show your support. Or you can go to the MRN bookstore and check out some of the latest books available. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and share on various social media.